welcome once again to our journey of reflection on how we are going to be able to form a new way of living together on this earth. Reflection. At the moment, I think you have my reflection in a mirror. But the important thing is not what I am reflecting, what I'm saying, the words I'm using. The important thing at the moment is that you remember that it is your reflection that is important, your personal reflection. The journey so far, till we are into its 4th month, may have started to become very challenging. Good, because if so, it will become effective. If we're not challenged, we don't change. And some of our greatest scientists have reminded us, as well as our mystics, Einstein, for example, never stop asking yourself questions. The search for answers. So here we are on our journey, facing different challenges, changing, growing, our responses to life becoming more effective. But just remember that it is your face in the mirror which you are really looking at. Don't apply what is said or your reflections on these themes to somebody else. It's for you. It's absolutely personal. And so let's begin with this one. Have you ever lost your passport or your ID? I hope not, but probably you have at some time. And I was working out of the country some months ago, and somebody picked up my small hand luggage and walked away with it. And among the many everyday treasures, and I would have said essentials, like a cell phone, which I had in that small bag, was my passport. It took more than 2 months to get another one. And at that point, I was stranded out of the country with no permission from any government anywhere to move into any other country. Until eventually I was given a temporary permit to move out of the country I was in and to complete the journeys that I had planned for the work I was doing. But that came to an end. And once that had come to an end, I was busily trying to get a renewal of my passport. And as I said, it took me nearly 2 months. The whole thing was, at first, a distressing, but later a most valuable experience. It led me to reflect on the importance, the over-importance we give to our social identity. The thing about this passport is that it can be faked. When I was trying to get the emergency document abroad, I was told that 1,000 such passports were stolen every year in just that one city. Why would somebody want to steal passports? There's a big trade in passports, as we know. We know something about the migration of people around the world at the moment, and how many passports are stolen to be used by somebody else whose own passport would not take them where they want to go. And so my passport is probably, my stolen one, was possibly being used by somebody else to do something quite different to what I do with my life. It always amazes me looking at a passport that we have to have somebody's authority. You have to know which authority has said that this is you, that this is me. A person I have never met and never will meet looks at the information which I give him or her and decides in the name of a government that I am the person I say I am. It's all a big game in some ways, and the whole human family plays it. Because all the information I give can also be faked. But there we are. If you do travel in and out of airports, you will have for some time realised that there is an attempt by different governments to make sure that the people coming into their country are truly the people they say they are, or that that country knows them to be. So what are they trying to do? To prove that my physical existence, my unique physical existence, is actually mine, the one standing in front of them. We had this by fingerprints. How many times have you seen on the television news migrants or asylum seekers or perhaps refugees making their fingerprints? I used to go in, I still do, in and out of a particular country every year, once a year for work. And every year I gave my fingerprints. And eventually I was stopped at passport control, and the person in charge said to me firmly, "Your fingerprints have changed." To which I'm afraid I gave an answer he didn't like. Well, try washing up, gardening, and aging. They do a marvellous job in changing your fingerprints. Well, I think other people had discovered the same thing too, so then it changed from fingerprints only to looking straight into a camera so they could record a pattern on the retina of your eyes. When I questioned this at one of the airport controls, the man behind the counter said, "Well, to be perfectly honest, we've got too small a data bank for this to be any use at all in detecting somebody coming in on a false passport." But we still do it, and now there are other ways. Migrants, refugees, asylum seekers, terrorists, and ordinary people like me, all proving that I am the person I say I am this unique individual. I am a unique being. I am one unique member of the human family that we were talking about in our last meeting together. Unique psychophysical person with a unique history of experience. That should be enough, but it really isn't. We always want to know what other people think of us. Once, to the surprise of his followers, Jesus of Nazareth asked that, "Who do people say I am?" And I wonder why he asked for it. We usually ask for it because we're hoping we'll get some very positive and complimentary feedback. We might not. But how wise are we to ask? What are we asking for? What they think I am, who they think I am, based on selected bits of my behaviour or conversations or opinions that I have expressed. Even that is sort of sifted through, sifted through, first of all, their own expectations as to what they expect I am, who I am, what I will say, and secondly, through their own, not only expectations, but experiences, perhaps sifted through their own jealousy. So, how valuable is this? It's limited to some of my words and my works. It's highly selective on my part and equally selective on the part of the person who's telling me who I am. Even the most intimate relationships I have cannot reveal the whole of who I am. The other will only know the person I project myself to be. The whole reality, beyond the self I choose to project. Even when the other has lived close enough or long enough with me to be able to guess, to intuit how I might be feeling in a certain situation and how I might respond. But I am still projecting that information. I'm still giving that information to the other as clearly as I give this information to the person who stamps my passport. We cannot know the final truth of another. Are we ready to accept that? We hear a lot about people being mind readers. Well, to be perfectly honest, nobody can read another person's mind. What we can do is read and interpret the patterns of brain waves running across our skull, or rather our brain, the electroencephalograph that prints out when we suddenly have a different pattern, where we're thinking of something important, when perhaps we are anxious or frightened or relaxed and so on. We can read those patterns. I've done some of it myself in my own studies. We can read those patterns, but we assume that we know what the person is experiencing. So whether we are using high-tech equipment to read brainwave patterns, or we're deducing from watching the person react in similar situations before, we can guess a great deal of what the other person might be thinking, but we really do not know it. Now that means me. Nobody can really know that about me. This is why I used the mirror at the beginning, because the tendency is to push it on to other people. What I have to say now is nobody can read my mind. Nobody can really understand the full truth of who I am, of myself. It is myself. We begin to wake up to the reality of the self that I am, that nobody else can know, usually at a very early age. And I've had many examples shared with me from mothers, particularly, and sometimes fathers, who have been surprised when a little one has shared with them the first moments of realization that there is more to me than this body, psyche, person. One like this, the little boy happens to be called Adam, so he's good for a general example. But his mother told me, I know Adam, and his mother told me that when he was about 4.5 years old, in the winter he was getting ready to go to the kindergarten and he couldn't tie the laces of his shoes. So his mother bent down to tie them for him. And she said, I suddenly had a feeling he was looking at me in a different way. So I looked up, and little Adam said, with all the seriousness you can think of, You do not know my real self, do you? Now, his mother was totally taken aback at what sounded a very adult statement from her 4.5-year-old getting ready for the kindergarten. But it is not a unique experience. It's not a once only. At a very early age, usually, all of us wake up somehow to the fact there's more to me than the name I give myself. There is something that isn't the body, isn't the mind. It's not what I think, it's not what I feel. I can't explain it, but I know it. The non-physical reality. You have to do today, or when you reflect on this theme, it may be interesting when you start looking back to your first moments of waking up to who you are, of knowing who I am. That secret self, that hidden self, which St. Paul calls it, which is known only to me, and the source that brought me into existence and holds me in existence. We are used to calling non-physical reality something like spirit. The word varies from language to language, but we do have a word for what could be non-physical reality, because absolutely everything around us and ourselves, our beings included, are physical reality. They come into existence, they exist for a while in space-time, and they end their existence in space-time. And this includes the stars, the universe itself, physical reality. But we, all of us, at some point, wake up to the fact there is something more, something that cannot be named. Me, self, spirit, whatever it is. And it's far, far more important than this body, psyche, personality that, like my passport, I give so much importance to. St. Paul, who I mentioned a moment ago, used to say that this was the most important thing that he could think of praying for anyone else. That we woke up to our hidden, our secret, our innermost, our real self. And that knowing this, we would eventually reach, in his language, the full dimensions of God. Spirit to spirit. Full dimensions of God. Well, our traditions have given us various examples and symbols of what that could mean. And certainly in today's world of crisis, one such dimension that we need to grow into, to recognize, is an unconditional compassion, an unconditional respect for everyone and everything that exists, that has unfolded and is still unfolding from that one source of all life, God by endless numbers of names. To move into that ability to experience and to see released in us a compassion and a respect that is not limited by the boundaries and the distinctions that I set for my body, psyche, person in space-time. The self that is free of all this. The self that is an expression of that ultimate reality, the great mystery we have called God. without an opening up to this unconditional compassion, we are simply not going to find the way to live with each other on this planet in peace. So this is how important it is to be able to reflect on the difference between the social personality, the identities that I'm given, the ideas I have about myself, or about my personhood, my personality, my importance in society, or what other people say about me. To move back, to let go, and to have revealed to me who I truly am. And then I can move into those dimensions of the mystery where I can accept the differences with loving compassion for everyone and everything. And at this moment of crisis in the world, it is our only way out of the dilemma we are in. The new way of living together, then, depends on my willingness to discover who I truly am. Several people have pointed this out to us, and I'm thinking at the moment of a man who was a very important social activist in the South American continent, a man called Dom Helder Camara. He worked tirelessly for social justice in his own country, in his own continent, but he was also a person invited to travel and speak to many others. And on one occasion, he was speaking to students in the North American continent. And they were responding enthusiastically and generously to his passionate words about justice. And a large number of them came and said they were willing to leave their studies and their homes and go with him and fight for justice. And he shook his head and said, "Oh no, I do not want you." And by explanation he said this: until you have found your own inner self in a situation of injustice, you will only end up washing blood off your hands with more blood. A very clear message, and one that can be applied to all of us everywhere in the world today. We need to find out, each one of us, who I truly am, the source from which I came, so that I recognize, first of all the rest of the human family as coming from the same source and bonded with me, and refinding my relationship with everyone else on this planet. But I have to find my own inner depth in order to be able to open to the other with compassion and respect and understanding. Or the blood being washed off hands with more blood will continue. Our way to peaceful living with each other, coexistence and development of this wonderful planet, depends on my willingness to discover who I really am. We have so many people who've told us this. I'm thinking of one of our famous Christian mystics who said, look, first see who you are and then become who you are. And a rather small, tubby, joyful little Hindu monk who used to go, sannyasi, who used to travel barefoot up and down in the village streets that I knew him, singing songs to the young children in Hindi, their language, but sometimes translating them into a rough English for all the foreign tourists who were around. And one of them that bears this theme goes something like this. He would look firmly into the eyes of the children and say, "You are not this body. You are not this restless mind. So, be good, do good, serve, meditate, reflect, and realize that you're not. You, yourself, is not this body, psyche, personality." Then he used to go on, "Please believe me, do it, and you'll be free." I think it's good advice that we could all hear. Am I willing to let myself discover that I am not just a body, psyche, person? On this temporary journey through space-time, that I am a non-physical reality, a self, which is spirit? If I do, then I will see the whole of this journey from an entirely different perspective. And just as at the beginning of these series, we see a beautiful view of trees and water in reflection, and then they turn round and we see the reality. This is what will happen to us. All about our social personalities, our passports, the role people expect us to play, the positive and complimentary feedback they give us, will all be put at the side. What really matters is, do I know who I am? Do I really know who I am? During this week, or rather the weeks ahead, I suggest you let that question just keep repeating itself, and then listen to your own answers. And if occasionally you have to stand in front of a mirror, remind yourself that this applies to you, to nobody else. Your life is your responsibility. My life is my responsibility. And have I really found the answer to that question? Who are you?